All right, cool. Or we'll hop in here soon too.
Okay.
Okay, so um, you're in the nightlife. You were trying to stop drinking over and over, and didn't really have the tools. You weren't doing the inner work. Is that kind of where we left off?
Yeah, totally. And I finally just got to a point, I think it was 2019 is when I got sober. And it was just, I woke up one day and I knew that was it. And for me, I literally, it was hard, but I had to cut off so many relationships that were keeping me in that dark place. And I just had to
Mm-hmm.
make the decision of, unfortunately, I'm going to lose a lot of friends and my whole life is going to change and be different. But I was to a point where I knew that was finally what I wanted. So yeah, one
What
day just
what did it look like? I mean, not to like bring up old stuff, but like was there like something that really pushed you to, was there something that happened, or was it just collectively, what did your life look like at
it
that
was
point when you were just done?
So it was just kind of collectively. There was a moment, though, which is really interesting that I do like to share with people. I don't know. I don't regularly get panic attacks. Like I do have anxiety every now and then, but there
Mm-hmm.
was a time that I had a full-blown panic attack. Like I couldn't breathe and it was just this overwhelming feeling. And it really felt like whatever you believe in, God or a higher power, it felt like God was shaking me. Like you have to
Mm,
make a change. Like your life is so out of balance and not where you want it to be. It felt like a physical manifestation of like what I was feeling internally. And it was that day I remember being like, okay, something has to change. Something has to change. And it was like a week later or so that I was like, okay, I'm done. And
mm,
unfortunately, like my ex, he was my drinking buddy, and so that was like a
right.
big part of my life. And I had to leave him. I had to stop hanging out with a lot of my friends. It was really just a big shift and a big change, but I was finally to a point where I was ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where were you at when you had this panic attack?
I was at home.
That's good.
I was at home. Yeah, thank goodness. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
just such a point that I remembered. And I've actually had another panic attack since then. And it's the same thing. It's almost like I'm getting these signs from God
Mm-hmm.
or the universe that's like, okay, your life is out of balance. You need to make a change. But I'm like constantly ignoring that intuition and those um yeah, basically just ignoring my own intuition until finally it gets to a point where it's like, I have this panic attack and it's almost like a shaking, like
Yeah.
not listening, like you need to listen, you need to make a change. And so, yeah, that was like a big turning point for me when I realized that it was time.
So you make this decision to stop drinking, and I'm in that journey right now. Like I stopped drinking before the pandemic and then just got bored and started drinking
Yes.
again. And I'm like, gosh, like, and somebody told me the other day, they're like, you'll find that alcohol is actually the solution to the underlying problem. So when you stop drinking, you identify what the problem is. Like, did you ever identify the reason why you were drinking? Like, can you identify what that is?
Yeah, it was a combination of things. I mean, I feel like almost everybody has some form of trauma. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood and even my adulthood, just things that I wasn't dealing with. Again, I didn't feel like I
Mm-hmm.
had the tools to know how to cope with emotion or like these uncomfortable feelings. I wasn't good at speaking my feelings. That's actually only something I recently started to improve upon. So for me, it was really hard for me to say what I was feeling. And so I was never really dealing with the trauma that I experienced or anything like that. So drinking was
Mm.
absolutely a way for me to cope. And then also the boredom. Like that is a
Yes,
real thing. I
it is.
So that's actually how I started my business. So I got sober in 2019, like right before the pandemic. And so when I did drink, I literally would go to work, get home around 5 and start drinking. And I would drink all
Mhm.
night, usually until the point of blackout every night. And then on the
Oh my
weekends,
gosh.
like same thing. I was just never there. It was just always checked out. It's like crazy looking back on it. I'm like, how did I even do that? It's crazy. But
Mm.
yeah, I all of my free time was spent drinking. So when I got sober, I was like, okay, now what do I do? I have all this
Yeah.
time. Like I knew that I had to find something to fill that time, or else I would most likely go back to drinking. So it was important for me to find a hobby that I enjoyed doing. So I was just on Pinterest,
Uh-huh.
just looking at random hobbies, like what do people do in their free time? And I came across dot mandala painting. And so I saw that on there and I was like instantly drawn to it. It's just colorful and pretty, and
Mhm.
mandalas are just like, they just draw you in. And when I saw
Yeah.
that, like, oh my gosh, I have to try this. So I bought all the supplies, I got paint, I got tools. And the first time I tried it, actually, it was pretty terrible. It did not look how it looked on Pinterest. I was like, what?
You
And it's
started on little rocks, I remember.
started on rocks. I was painting on natural rocks that I just found out in nature. And yeah, it was harder than I thought. And then also, so dot painting is just like very tedious. It's a lot
Mhm.
of little details. And I have always struggled with ADD. And I actually
Mhm.
used to be really like on a high dose medication for it. And I hated the way that it made me feel. And
Mhm.
so doing this art form that's so tedious and time consuming, I was like, why am I interested in this? Like my attention span is not there. Like what? But I feel like the art form kind of found me in a time that I needed it most.
Mhm.
And whereas everywhere else in my life is like chaotic and my mind's always going, this form of painting is like a time that I can sit and be still and actually focus on something, which to me is like mind blowing, but has been absolutely life changing.
Mhm. It is a meditation for sure, you
Mhm.
know. It's been so beautiful to watch you expand and grow and so quickly. You are a big reason why I'm inspired to be sober because it makes me emotional just even thinking about it. But can you imagine what a world would look like if we all lived in like our inner artist
That
and
Honestly, that is like
oh,
my dream. My dream for the world is for people to be able to experience doing something that they truly love and are passionate about. And if you can make a living off of that, I mean, it's life changing. I was so
yeah.
unhappy working in real estate. There was nothing about real estate that like excited me. I did not have that passion. So experiencing the feeling and passion that I feel in art and being able to do it full time now and make a living off of it, like that's just something I really hope that everybody gets to experience someday. It's really special.
Yeah, your painting behind you, you just finished that and I love it. Like I'm
Thank
gonna commission a piece for you once I move in
I
and
would really love.
you channel and I have
Mhm.
my sweet friend Luana on here and she kind of has a similar story where she kind of was forced into her passion of creating essential oils and she does a lot of muscle testing and so
Oh,
she's
I love
starting
that.
to get a taste of owning a business and being in her creative self all the time and it's just beautiful to witness and very inspiring honestly, so
Thank you so
good on
much.
you girl. Yeah, it's freaking awesome. Um, who is your mentor? Like who inspires you?
In art or just in life or
Just yeah, in general, is there somebody that like you or maybe both what comes to mind when I ask you that question?
I mean, there are other artists who have inspired me. It's funny because yeah, when I first started, I was painting on little rocks and I would look at these other artists who were doing big pieces like this and I'm like, how do they do that? Like I can't even imagine like doing that or what it must take. And I honestly doubted myself a ton. I didn't think that I would ever progress to the point that I did. So yeah, I definitely
Hmm.
have other artists that I like to follow that inspire me. And I feel like even as an artist, I feel like it's important to have other people or other artists that we are inspired by. That's the best way I can describe it is they give me inspiration to like keep adapting and growing as an
Hmm.
artist.
And you've been really sharing your process on YouTube, and I'll connect all the links and everything to it so that if people want to learn to do what you're doing, you are now sharing your gifts with everyone, and I think that's really beautiful.
Yes, I started doing YouTube. Before I was just selling my art, and now it's kind of to the point where I've seen what a difference it's made in my life and how it's completely changed my life. The fact that me as a person that has ADD can sit down and paint for 5 to 6 hours a day, to me is insane. And
Mm.
just quickly, I don't know if everybody's familiar with like what a mandala is, but I feel like that's important to the art that I do. So mandalas, I mean, it's a symbol. It's a form of sacred geometry and it's seen all over the whole world in all different cultures. And it's
Mhm.
really used to get people into a deeper state of meditation. So even just by looking at the piece of art, it does something to the brain. It really
Yeah.
can help you get more into a meditative state. And then the actual process of creating the art, it really is, it's a flow, it's a download, you get into a
Mm.
zone, like my mind just like checks out and it's the patterns and the colors, it's so soothing and I can concentrate and just it's amazing. And so I've kind of shifted a little bit. I'm still selling my art, but I want to teach people. So I've decided to start doing tutorials on YouTube because I feel like it is life changing and I feel like it is a form of art that a lot of people can find benefits from.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So in addition to doing your mandalas, do you have a form of spiritual practice? I mean, I know, and also, um, yeah, answer that first for me. Like, did you have a spiritual practice before, or was that after you got sober?
Yeah, so I do believe in God. I know everybody has a different name for God. Um,
Right.
yeah, there's so many different forms, but I've always had that relationship and connection. And I feel like when I started drinking heavy and working in the nightlife, I just kind of disconnected from my spirituality. I stopped paying attention to my intuition. I stopped paying attention to my emotions. Like I feel like I really just cut everything off. Like I cut off that connection to God or source or whatever. And
Mm.
so once I got sober, that was actually something that was really important to me was that I wanted to find a way to tap back into that. I wanted to find that connection again. And so, yeah, I mean, prayer, meditation, I feel like those are such important things. And also, this form of art is also a form of prayer and meditation for me. So
Mm.
I feel like that, like we were saying, like that flow, that download and stuff, I feel like is actually channeled into my artwork. And that is a way that I am connecting with God, whether I'm aware of it or not. So I do still, other than painting, I mean, painting is a big spiritual practice for me. But aside from that, I do still do things like prayer and meditation.
Beautiful. When we chatted before the call, or when I was asking you to do this call, you said that a big part of staying mentally fit is exercise and a therapist and being able to talk about your emotions. Can you
Uh,
kind of talk about those two things? And
yeah. So I've always, I mean, I've always kind of been an athlete, but exercise is honestly, when it comes to mental health, that
yeah,
is a huge part of my life. There's something about just like the endorphins and moving the body. I think you're moving energy, like anything that's
right.
static or stuck within you, like you can get that out through exercise. So I honestly, I try to go to the gym every day, and it's not so much about, I mean, I like being strong. I want to be like strong and fit, but really like it's what it does to my mental health that is so important. So that is absolutely like almost one of the non-negotiables in my life, is that I try to like move my body, whether it's lifting weights, running, yoga, just really anything that helps
Mm.
keep my mood stable.
Yeah.
So what was the other question? It was,
You said that you had
oh,
hired a therapist. Like, has that been,
yeah.
what was that process like?
So I'm a very open-minded person. So I like to just kind of try new things and see what works and see what doesn't. I, while I was still drinking and kind of struggling with that, I was seeing a therapist, and it was just kind of like talk therapy. And it ended up not being a good fit. And I kept finding like, it's therapy's hard. It's hard because you are sharing the most vulnerable parts of yourself with someone else. And unfortunately, sometimes it's not a good fit. So I was kind of going through this cycle of starting a new therapist, telling them all of my like life stories, all of those hard things, and then finding out it wasn't a good fit. So like going to the next one, it's definitely a process to find the right person. But I
Mm.
feel like talk therapy can be so beneficial. I feel like we just kind of like hold a lot of things in, and just verbalizing it, getting it out of the body, that on its own is amazing. So I
Yeah.
did talk therapy, and then also, I mean, I'm into like Reiki. I've done Reiki. I worked for 8 weeks with a friend of mine who's a spiritual healer. And that was just a combination of talking about things, but also energy healing and just like some different modalities. She does a lot of sound healing. So I
Mm.
think whatever, I just encourage people to try different things, because
Yeah.
talk therapy or like traditional therapy might be great for one person, but it might not for someone else. So it's like you don't know unless you try. So yeah, I think it's important to just like try different modalities and see kind of what fits for you. And I remember when we were talking before, also, I had mentioned that I kind of go through phases where, and I think this is most people, because my husband actually was dealing with this recently, where he'll have a bad day and it's like, okay, I probably should find a therapist. And then you
Yeah.
go the next week and everything's totally fine, you know? So it's like these ebbs and flows. And when we're feeling good, we're like, oh, I don't need to see a therapist. I don't need to talk about my emotions. I feel fine. Like life's good. But then there's a day where things are off, and then it's like almost like an emergency, you know, like you need to
Hmm.
talk to someone right then. And it's like, I feel like instead of waiting for those moments to like hit you all at once, it's better to just have something regular, whatever it may be, where you're like having that regular practice, whether it's seeing a
Hmm.
therapist or whatever it might be. I think it's good to have that mental health maintenance
Yeah.
instead of waiting until it's like an urgent moment.
That's fascinating because I've been interviewing a lot of different people to bring onto this series, and that has been the common denominator of being proactive so that as these traumatic events show up, because it's going to happen, we're human and we're spiritual beings having this human experience. And to have these practices in place is what's going to get us through the trauma easier. And so thank you for bringing that up because And you know what I've noticed too is like sometimes the one-on-one is beautiful, but doing some like group therapy or like going to a group sound bath or being in a circle, you can learn a lot by just being in a group environment, focusing on the
Yeah.
same thing.
So I actually went to like a women's retreat thing recently.
Mm,
And so I actually am naturally very introverted.
mm-hmm.
And when you first asked to interview me, however long ago, honestly, it was probably that fear. Uh,
Yeah,
it's something that I've had to really work on in the past couple of years to even feel confident enough to do something like this. But I'm very introverted. I paint all day at home by myself. I do a lot of things by myself. And so I think I'm realizing how important community is. And I did a women's retreat recently. And it was another thing. I get very nervous. I just don't know how it's going to go. I know it's going to be vulnerable and talking about feelings, which is so uncomfortable. And then sometimes when they're strangers, it's just overwhelming. But honestly, that was like a life-changing moment. Like just being around other people who are there to be vulnerable.
yeah.
It's it's so important. And I feel like, yeah, community is just something that has been brought to my life more recently. And I love what you're doing and creating a community. And that's what I do with my art as well. Everything is about creating a community of people who are like-minded.
It's like sacred geometry, you know, like the flower of life is so beautiful because there's all of these
Yes.
facets that come into it. So,
Interconnect.
I yeah, we're interconnected, and it's really interesting. I'm going to open up for questions here in just a minute, but do you feel like being an entrepreneur is a very spiritual experience? Like, do you feel like did you realize that that's or maybe that wasn't even your intention to be an entrepreneur, but has that been a spiritual experience for you?
It just kind of happened. But I will say things that I have shifted so much as a person because of this, not being confined to that 9 to 5 day job and working so hard to build somebody else's dream. Like making that shift to the point where now it's like I wake up every day because I want to build my dream. I want to build my
Yeah.
life. Like I do. I mean, yeah, I would say that's a spiritual experience, learning
Yeah.
yourself and who you are and creating something based on your life and what you want.
Your passion.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. You can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question for Demi. What's coming up for you guys? You can raise your hand if you want. Is anything coming up? No?
That's okay.
What about you, Luana? Oh,
Well,
go ahead. Somebody started to talk.
it was me, but I saw her raise her hand, so she can go ahead if she needs to. I just wanted
No?
to make a comment of how beautiful that piece is behind you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is
I was
one.
looking at it when we joined and I was like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. And then to learn you made that, like, what?
I can
That's
show you one.
incredible.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning.
It is beautiful. Would you mind showing them your studio a little bit?
Yeah, it's a mess right now because I had to move this table to get good lighting,
It's
but
okay.
you can see my
Wow.
paint wall. So that's all my
That is
paint and
awesome.
our supplies. And then I'm working on a 36-inch custom, so it's really big. And so I had to like rearrange my studio this morning to be able to use a bigger table. But you can
Oh my
see
gosh. That is beautiful.
that's
How
what
fun.
I'm working on now.
Oh,
Oh,
I
oh,
love that.
wow.
So yeah, this is my little studio. It's so nice because when I first started painting, my husband and I lived in this small studio above somebody's garage. And that I had like this big table in our little studio, and he was so supportive. But for a while in that studio, that's where I made all my art. So when we finally moved, I was able to get this whole room, and it's just like so exciting to have my own space now where I can paint all day.
I just got a vision of you having this huge, massive studio, that.
And we are moving again. And so I'm kind of eyeballing those extra rooms and hoping I can get one that's a little bigger. I feel like this one just filled up so quick.
Yeah. Lawana, can you relate to a lot of the stuff she's talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you mentioned sacred geometry, and I have been called over and over again to learn and lean into sacred geometry. So I don't really know where to start. I signed up for a class through a shaman, but then he changed his agenda and didn't finish. So how did you actually pursue learning sacred geometry?
I did not. No.
Okay.
So I was always kind of aware of sacred geometry throughout my life. I thought it was interesting and fascinating. And then I got into the mandalas, and it actually took me a while to realize, oh, a mandala is sacred geometry, like they're the same. So then that's when I kind of got more into the sacred geometry. And I feel like it can get complicated and overwhelming if you like go really deep into it. So it just depends on like what it is you're wanting to learn. But for me, I just think it's fascinating because sacred geometry is found all throughout everything, all over the world. Like it's just this thing that connects everybody.
Yeah. And it is energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like when you look at the art pieces, the fact that it is, a lot of it is flow, but I do put down like a grid mark before I start so that I'm making sure everything's symmetrical. But I feel like just when you look at things that are geometrically aligned, it just draws you in. Like there's something about the sacred geometry that is, I don't know, I just feel like it's within all of us and connects all of us.
Yeah. So I do too. And I think what stopped me is my age. Because I'm like, oh man, you're too old to go learn all that.
No way.
And I know that's not true. I know that's
no.
not true. And the other part of that is I think we get to go with it as far as we feel it. And when it stops, it stops.
That's exactly.
I don't feel like we have to go all the way into anything.
That's so true.
That's how I have healed and energized and recreated myself, is a lot of what you're saying, with just you reach into what works for you, and you do have to lean in and you do have to do the work, the inner work. It doesn't happen without the inner work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lawana, tell them a little bit about your story, because I think it's kind of similar. You guys, I'm just going to preface by saying this because I've gotten to know her a little bit, but she was having those panic attacks too. Is that fair? Like God was shaking you, But go ahead, tell them a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm getting off of an antidepressant that I've been on for 20 years. And just to make the story short, my health started declining about 6 years ago. And then 3.5 years ago, I was on 22 prescription medications.
Wow.
I have self-medicated with street drugs. I've done all the things, right? I started seeing therapists when I was in my teens. I know everything you're saying with starting over. And so this last round, when I got the Effexor 20 years ago, the reason I got it from my general physician was because I didn't want to go through the therapy thing of finding another person I could
Mm.
open to. Well, I really screwed myself because he didn't know what he was doing. He overdosed me for 12 years. And unbeknownst to all of us, it was the pharmacy who finally let me know that I was overdosing on this medication.
Wow.
But I know deep within myself that I am meant to be off this medication, but it's very, very difficult to get off of. And I don't say that because I don't want to call that in.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to be easy. And it does get to be easy for the most part, but we still have a physical body.
Mhm.
I still have a brain that is going through hell right now,
Yeah.
getting off this medication. So I'm tapering down, and this is my 5th attempt. And so I've done a lot of healing my emotions in the last 2 years. And I've been preparing myself with the essential oil modalities, the crystal energy, the sound healing, that I use it all, you guys. I use it
Yeah.
all. And so I've prepared myself to do this. And although I have a plan, it's already shifted a little bit, and it's going to be a longer tapering off than I had originally mapped out, because my body's telling me, no, you're not going that fast. But
Mm.
and I started drinking pretty heavily again recently, and I've stopped again because my body is telling me, you're a fool. Do not do this on top of everything else, because do you want to live your dream or do you not? That's what constantly reaches out. So I really appreciate what you've gone through, and I wish I was more creative with art, with paint. I used to have a ton of paints, but I just didn't feel, I was too judgmental on myself.
Yeah.
So I like really working with other energies and doing crystal grids, which again ties into sacred geometry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it could be any modality. So that's beautiful. Luana, you're doing amazing. You're
thank you.
inspiring too. Y'all are great. All of you guys on here, just I love. How you doing, Jenny? Are you emotional right now?
Yeah, okay.
What you
Your
feeling?
story's
It's
so inspiring. I'm
oh,
okay.
yeah, you're beautiful. We all need this, when Twitch, when I saw that story about Twitch, and who knows what really happened, but we know that the pandemic is hitting us, and the after effects of the isolation, is a thing, and we're all coming out of it now, and we do need community. And Jenny, you and I are going to get coffee next week, and I'm going to give you a
Yes.
big hug. But getting off of these medications and the things that are numbing us out, and really, because I know that our emotions are superhero powers. Do you know what I mean? Like, wouldn't you say, Demi, like now as you're doing those paintings, are you like, do you feel more comfortable with your emotions?
I do. It's taken a long time to get here though. I used to just like stuff emotions down and down and down until it would like come out and explode. And if
Mhm.
alcohol was involved, I was like a very angry person, and I would have these outbursts, and I hated it because I knew that wasn't who I was. Like I was a totally different person, but alcohol just made me like, and it wasn't just alcohol, it was the mixture of alcohol and not dealing with my emotions that made me that way.
Right.
So it's taken a long time. It's taken a lot of learning new skills, learning how to be open and vulnerable, learning to have trust in people enough to be able to share my emotions. So it's definitely
Mhm.
been a process. And honestly, I think if you're a type of person that isn't used to being vulnerable and showing emotions, it's really hard and it's really scary. And I think it's really important to find communities like this where you can speak or cry or anything that you're feeling without fear of feeling judged.
Yeah, because our society is always like making emotions a bad word. And I'm a Cancer sun and a moon. I'm very emotional. And my mom would always be like, you're too sensitive.
Mhm.
And even now, like it scares her because like if I feel angry, I'm gonna express it. I'm not gonna trap it in my body because, I lost my sister to cancer and I know that those trapped emotions is what causes disease in us. And so to have a platform like this to give people the space to feel those emotions, that all of them are valid, and on the other side of anger is joy,
Mhm.
but we got to get that shit out.
Yeah.
It's okay. We're human. It's all right to feel these lower vibrations because everything is just vibrational,
Mhm.
right? Like even the low times, like those dark nights of the soul, that in the darkness is where we learn so much. And so to not, you know, downplay them, but also just like honor, wherever we're at. And I love the hero's journey. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
Mhm.
we're going through these cycles and just appreciating the dark and the light and being that beacon of light when people are in the dark. Because, I mean, there's times where I'll call up Luana, I'll be like, I'm having a bad day. But I know I can talk to her about anything and I can cry and look ugly and it's fine. And so I'm grateful for friends like you and all of that. Y'all are so beautiful.
You
And
too.
I love being in those circles. Jenny's been in some circles with me, and what you see is what you get with
Yeah.
with me nowadays. But when I was in real estate, I don't even recognize myself because I was just so inauthentic.
Oh, I was the
Honestly,
same.
I
So
hated it.
an interesting thing with like that part of my life, and maybe you can relate, but in real estate or any like high performing job, it's it's valuable to have that driver personality. So I like became this chameleon. I adapted. I'm like, I can do that. I'm going to hustle and I'm going to be this girl boss. And I'm going to, like I had all those driver qualities when internally that was like not what I was needing at that time at all. So I was in this totally inauthentic place for so long. And I think that's like when you asked about spirituality and the art and stuff, for me, I feel like that's probably the biggest aspect is I finally got to figure out who I really am. And it's not that driver. I don't want to be in that hustle culture all the time. Like it feels so exhausting to me. So now
Yeah.
I feel like I've been able to just come into my flow and like my true essence and not be like performing all the time and not forcing myself to have this personality that's not my own. So it's now
Hmm.
I have the freedom to just be who I am. And it is so liberating.
What's coming up for me is I feel, and this I can only speak for myself, but I think that's what I'm seeing in you too, is that I didn't know at the time that we had masculine and feminine energy. And back then I was so much in my masculine that I didn't allow for this feminine energy to like express herself and to do the art, to take the time to take a nap, to seek pleasure. I was just like a lot of it was the trauma of my sister dying and just staying really busy. But when I had that alone time and I had to get really quiet with my thoughts, I started really feeling that feminine and the masculine balance out. So now look at you, you still have your masculine where you're selling the things, you're doing the things, but then carving out time for that feminine piece of yourself.
Yeah,
Like, would you agree?
that is that is also just like a huge theme that I've learned over the past couple of years is like we all have that masculine and feminine, and sometimes it's off balance. And for me, I was living so much in my masculine, I was not making time for the feminine. So like emotions and intuition, that those are more feminine qualities. And so I honestly, I was a very cold person. I wasn't expressing emotions. I wasn't allowing myself to do that. I kind of just like cut it off, and I was just very cold. So now I feel like I have been learning more about the masculine and the feminine and becoming more balanced. And part of that is a lot of the flow. I've getting sober. One of the things I wanted to really tap back into was creativity, because that was something that I totally cut off. I felt like I had no creative energy. And so and that is also very like a feminine trait. So now it's like I was so masculine, and now I feel like I'm finally like coming into that balance and being okay, like softening a little bit more into.
Yeah. I don't know if I brought it up earlier, but I want to recommend a book that just, I used to be a dancer in junior high and well, all growing up. And then I had my daughter at 19 and I just stopped dancing. And one of my best friends recommended The Artist's Way. And I love this book because it brought my inner dance. Like I dance and I sing all the time. Like it is just a part of who I am. And that's how I tap into the divine. And but that book is like a self-guided book, and there's a journal that goes with it. And so if anybody wants to tap into their inner artist, pick up that book in the journal, and every week you go take yourself on a date, and then there's the morning pages. So the first thing you do, you wake up and you write just get it out. And it has been like life changing. So if anyone wants to tap into their inner artist, like let's change the world and do that.
Yes.
Kira, what's coming up for you guys? Like, I'm just curious, what inspired you guys to come on and listen to Demi's call today? I love that we have such beautiful humans on here, but can you tell me what you're learning from this call?
Did you say me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, like, did she say mine? I don't know what she's talking about. This is awesome, first of all, and thank you for letting me be a part of it. But it's bringing up, I used to be part of a women's support group, I guess is what it was, like 2 years ago. And these were women from all over the country. And I really miss it. So this is kind of bringing that back for me. It's awesome.
Sweet. I love that.
I just
Well, I'm
love
so happy.
connecting with strong feminine women,
Yeah.
who are just like kicking
Right.
ass and taking names.
I've known Kira since junior high, I think. She was friends with my little sister, and so it's just been really fun to watch your journey through social media. And I love that we're connected through technology, because who knows if we'd ever get a chance to,
Yeah.
do this. And so I'm really grateful to have you guys on here. So this is just kind of open forum. If you guys want to say anything, ask anything, like the stage is all yours. So ask away. Anybody? Oh, go ahead, Luana.
So we were talking a minute ago about, I heard the words judgment and how people's judgment affects us. And I think what's really coming front and center for me right now is we live our lives for the world too much. And I think the big message here is be yourself, because we are one in reality. And so if we're busy meddling in everybody else's thoughts and opinions and whatever, we aren't minding ourselves. So we're not in divine feminine and divine masculine. Both energies play a role all the time, but you can have and I'm not able to say the word I want to say, what's the opposite of the divine, Rochelle?
Maybe ego,
unbalanced
too
or
much in ego.
unempowered, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
feminine and masculine, and they both exist. They all exist all the time. And so our awareness of what we want first and who we are second. My biggest thing has been trusting myself. And Demi and Rochelle, I see you both having gone through that, where you have learned to trust who you are. And we get to do that. That's what we're here for. That's how I feel. And so I love seeing people do that. I've been actually teaching in groups recently on vibration, emotional vibration, and how we relate to that. And boy, I'll tell you, it has really, it's just very healing. And it makes you whole. And then we get to discover our creativity when we're able to do that. So thanks for sharing that level of things. And your art is gorgeous.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm just over here salivating.
So Demi,
it's absolutely stunning. It really is, Demi. It's beautiful. It's
Thank
memorizing.
you so much. Thank you.
Where can everyone follow you? Will you share a little bit about your business and how they can follow you?
Absolutely. So I am mainly on Instagram, and my business name is Thoughtful Dots. So it's at Thoughtful Dots on Instagram. And I feel like that name is just so perfect. It used to be Thoughtful Rocks when I first started, because I was painting rocks. And then at some point it changed to Thoughtful Dots because I wanted to expand. But I mean, I feel like it's the perfect name because literally every little dot is so thoughtfully placed. It's like, yes. So Thoughtful Dots, my business name, mainly on Instagram. And then also YouTube is where I teach tutorials. So if anybody is interested in learning, I do kind of like more beginner type stuff on there so that people can learn the art form. And then, I do also have a website, which is thoughtfuldots.com. And that's where I do like custom orders, and really any other information that people could need can be found on my website.
It's interesting, when my daughter moved out when she was 12, because, moms and daughters go through their stuff. But I would like telepathically talk to her as I would color mandalas, and then I would write her a little letter on the back of the mandalas, and sometimes I would send it and sometimes I wouldn't. But I'm always wondering, like, what is she going through as she's like I know you're channeling. And so I also thank you for posting your Amazon list. Like, my whole list in my Amazon, I just buy some of the supplies that you've suggested. So many tips.
People are always just wondering what tools I use. So like now everybody can just go and find the tools. And the cool thing is it's not super expensive, or it doesn't have to be. And so I feel like it's a good craft for people who just want to chill out a little bit. They can get a few supplies and put on the YouTube videos and just follow along. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've loved watching your fans and you reposting like their beginner stuff, and it's like, that looks really good for your first one, guys. Like, I'm gonna go. I just bought my first circle.
It makes me so happy to see other people being inspired to at least give it a try. I honestly, I would never consider myself like an artist or a creative person before this. So when I hear people say like, I'm not artistic or I'm not creative, I'm like, you just have to try. And it might not be this art form, it might be a different kind, but I think everybody has a little artist in themselves, and everybody has creativity. You just got to find ways to tap into it.
That's what I tell everyone. They're like, I can't dance. I'm like, oh, really? Like, everyone can dance. Everyone has a voice they can sing. Get your ass out there and go shake it, like
Sometimes it
just
just takes a little
try.
practice. Yeah, just try.
Stop comparing yourself. Stop judging. Like, just do
100%.
it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. Insightful. I knew this video was going to be amazing.
Thank you for having
Thank you,
me.
everyone that was on the call today. And if you guys have any last questions, go ahead and hop on now. But there's something to say, feel free to say it. But I sure love y'all.
I
See
wanted
you.
to
Thank
ask
you so much.
Demi,
Yeah.
do you do henna tattoos at all?
I do not, but I think henna is so cool. I like to watch those videos on Instagram. I would not be opposed to learning that someday. It's in the same realm,
Because it looks a little similar, right? From
It
what
is.
you do.
Yeah, they use cones. So like they have these plastic cones that they fill with the henna. And so it is a very different technique. But I mean, I feel like they're in the same realm. I think it would be so cool to learn that someday. I would love that.
Can you imagine the
That's awesome.
connection you would feel when you're like tattooing somebody with your art?
Yes. And like henna, I've seen people do the henna on pregnant bellies. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's like, I think that is so cool. You're like just decorating someone's belly with henna.
Oh, I love that. That'd be
Yeah.
beautiful. Good idea, Kira. Cool. Well, I will get this posted to YouTube and I'll share the link. So if anybody wants to share this with their friends and family, it'll be up within the next 24 hours. So, yeah, I just honor each and every one of you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you
And-
guys.
Thank you for inviting
Thank
me.
you for the invite.
Thank you. You're welcome. We'll talk to you later, guys. Have a good day. See ya.